This is a TalkStation original podcast.
On this week's episode of the Paperboys podcast, JJ and I speak to longtime News and Observer reporter AJ Carr. We talk about the NC State tournament run and AJ's time covering the Wolfpack and other ACC schools during his 43-year career. It all starts right now on the Paperboys podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Paperboys podcast. I'm JJ Smith.
And I'm Zach Nally.
We're reporters with the Carr County News-Times. We are joined today by AJ Carr, who spent almost 43 years at the News and Observer. AJ, thanks for being with us.
Thank you. It's a pleasure, and it's an honor to be on your program.
AJ, we started this podcast last June, so we're about 10 months in, and we made a list of people we wanted on that first year, and you made the cut. And not to pat ourselves on the back, but timing-wise, I don't think we could have nailed it any better. There's just a few things going on in the triangle with basketball these days, isn't it?
It's very, very exciting here, without a doubt.
Yeah, AJ lives in Raleigh, I should note, and AJ, you started at the News and Observer in '66, so you've been covering ACC basketball since then. I'm sure you watched it as a kid growing up. This run that NC State's on, winning 5 games in 5 days at the ACC tournament, and now winning 4 games in a couple of weeks at the NCAA tournament to make the Final Four. What do you where do you put this up with as stories that you've covered and watched in your time?
Well, it's certainly one of the most surprising and unexpected, I guess, that I can remember. But at the same time, it's just a great NC State story for sure, and story overall. And to have actually both the men and women in the Final Four here, but at the end of the season for the men, it was questionable if they could win maybe one game in the ACC tournament. I think they lost 4 in a row, or their last 4 regular season, and 7 of their last 9, and it was hardly a glimmer of hope among many people at that time, but it's turned out just unbelievably well for them so far. It really has.
Yeah, there was even talk about Kevin Keats, would he even be brought back, and he's gone from seemingly on the butcher's block there to getting losing his job to now getting all kinds of extensions, and looks like probably State fans want him there for forever.
Yeah, I'm sure they do now. But just a couple of weeks ago or so, it was a lot of them were, I think, based on at least what I read and what you would hear, that they were, his job was maybe in jeopardy then. And it's interesting today. I think Chip Alexander in the News and Observer, I think he was quoting one of the former assistants, one of Keith's former assistants, and who was calling him, he thought he was the best coach in America. so that's a different take on it. But he's really done a great job, just keeping them going, and then blending this team. And I was thinking too, as it's turned out, he really hit the jackpot with the transfer portal. All 5 starters anyway are transfers, and it couldn't have come at a better time probably for him.
JJ, you were at the News and Observer when the Wolfpack wins a national title in '74. You were there when they won a national title in '83, and of course this is the first Final Four they've been back to since '83, and just the fact they won 2 national titles there in a 9-year period was unbelievable. And Norm Sloan and Jim Valvano, and of course '83, Valvano loses his job in 1990, and it's kind of been wandering in the desert for Wolfpack ever since then. If somebody would have told you in 1983 that NC State wasn't going to make another Final Four for 41 years, what do you think your response would have been?
Well, it would be you just wouldn't think that, and because because going back, when you think about it, at the beginning of the ACC when it was first formed, State was really the dominant team, and they were the power in the ACC with every case there. They won several ACC titles in a row those first few years, and and actually almost compel some of the other schools to improve their programs. So their history really goes back and a long way. But 74 and 83 were really special times, and I thought the 74 team was just to me was just the best, the best that they've ever had, with David Thompson and especially Tommy Burles and Monty Tao in that group. And it was just probably the best. 83 was really kind of almost a fairy tale, but they were also talented and more talented than maybe people at one time thought. But they kind of came out of nowhere to win that one, as you know, in '83. But it has been a long drought for them in terms of championships, and like the first ACC title since '87, I think, which was during Coach Valvano's time there.
Yeah, it's been a while. I mean, you look at someone like myself who's 35, born in '88. There hasn't been a time in my lifetime that NC State has done what they're doing, and I'm curious because I know JJ is a big State fan, and I'm listening to the dates you all are mentioning. So is that for you? Is that when the win when you were 9 years old?
I was really young when all that went down.
But did that register enough that kind of helped make you a fan for life?
No, I missed '83. I was too young for '83. So the only thing I remember, my fandom began with Chris Corciani and Rodney Monroe, Fire and Ice, and they went to they won the ACC tournament in '87, like AJ says, and then in '89 they went to the Sweet 16. And just a horrible call by an official versus Georgetown. If they would have won that game, they would have went to the Grade 8 and played Duke, ironically enough, for the right to go to the Final Four. And then 1990, Jim Valvano was fired. Looking back now, it was a scandal at the time, but now it seems almost quaint that the reason he was fired. These players were selling shoes and tickets for money. And with the way college basketball is set up now, that is almost hysterical. That's why he lost his job over. And then AJ, maybe you can agree or disagree with me. The school decided to kind of, I don't know if the word would be overcorrect and kind of just make sure the program was being run smooth, cleanly, and grades were good, and so they didn't put a whole lot of emphasis on wins there for a little bit. And since 1990, it's been rough. It's been Wolfpack fans have not had a lot to root for, have they, AJ?
No, they really have. As you were mentioning with Coach Valvano when he was fired, obviously you certainly want a clean, everybody to run a clean program, and so but with what they did, I thought. Obviously there might have been some penalties, certainly penalties may be attached to that somewhat by the NCAA, but I didn't feel like it still warranted his firing, actually, for him to lose his job. I thought they could correct it, and even though if you commit a violation, then you're going to be penalized. But I was disappointed. I think that he was fired in that situation.
Yeah, AJ, were you able to cover any of that run in '74, '83? Were you on the NC State beat at all?
A lot in '74, but in '83 we were switching more to also, I guess, a beat system with writers assigned to specific schools. So I covered them some, but I did not go to the Final Four in '83. But in '74, I spent a lot of time with that team, including the Final Four when they beat UCLA and then Marquette to win it. So that was really a special time. One of the most enjoyable and memorable periods that probably that I've had the opportunity to be connected with.
Where does David Thompson rank in athletes that you ever covered?
Well, I think to me, he's the best college basketball player that I think I've ever seen in person. In person, I just thought I would just put him at the top of the list. And of course, there've been a multitude of great players at all the schools, but I just felt like he was probably the best. He was, for various reasons. For one, he was really a positionless player before anyone ever began talking about positionless players. He could play anywhere. He could do everything, and he did it all really, really well. And even when he was averaging 29 points, that I think his senior year, he of course there was no 3-point shot, and he could shoot the three, and no dunking, and he would have put on the greatest dunking show probably in ever if that had been allowed. So they alley-ooped instead, but I would rank him at the top of the players I've seen in person. Although there are so many that you could talk about.
And no freshman played back then, right? So he lost a whole year of records he probably could have broke, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. He did it all in three varsity seasons, and but I know that he was really. I remember when he did come in as a freshman, and they began to the crowds the freshman games became pretty enormous. Really, they came to see him and play on the freshman teams. So you knew early on he was really, really special and going to have a great career.
AJ, you started at the News and Observer in '66, so Dean Smith had been on the job at Carolina for about 6 seasons. I think you and Norm Sloan come in at the same time. Jimmy V, we've mentioned, comes in 1980. Mike Krzyzewski comes in at 1980. Roy Williams comes in 2003, just about 6 years before you retire. Boy, you got to cover some coaches in your time, didn't you?
Yeah, very, very fortunate, really to be able to follow or work with, I guess you would say, or cover coaches of that caliber for sure. I mean, they were all outstanding. They were really all enjoyable, also, just from to work with, and in fact, and they were all different, but they were all all great coaches and really really good people. And it was a pleasure. I feel very fortunate to been there during their time. Really.
I was going to say, did all those guys treat the media pretty well, or did you have pretty good relationships?
Yeah, I did. I did. I enjoyed the relationships with them, each one of them, and they were, they were usually they were cooperative and they had time. They would take time for you, and so it was good in that regard. They were just Valvano, of course, was certainly entertaining as well as informative, and but they were all different, but all a pleasure to be with.
AJ, when you got together with other reporters, maybe within the state or maybe outside the state, if you traveled, did any of them express jealousy that you all had an embarrassment of riches when it came to college basketball?
Nobody ever expressed that, but we would have of course, the people. Interestingly, we'd have reporters coming in maybe from say Roanoke or elsewhere, to cover these coaches and these teams here. Of course, obviously in Roanoke, Virginia, you had the University of Virginia there, but they were they still, I think, look forward to the time they could either interview the coaches in our area or write about the teams here as well.
You started in '66.
It was hard to beat that line. It was hard to beat that lineup of coaches in one area, really.
You started in '66. You finished in 2009. I would imagine the newspaper reporting underwent some changes during that time.
Yeah, yeah, it really has. I think, as I was telling you earlier, though, just from the, I guess, the technical standpoint, when I first started, of course, we were using typewriters, and if you went to a game, if you could not get back to the office, if you were out of town covering a game, then we would transmit by Western Union, and then sometime if there were breakdowns, with that, then sometimes you'd have to dictate your call in to someone who could take it in the office, and so that's incredibly changed.
Wow.
But we were, like I said, we were just a little ahead of the Pony Express at that time, getting it to everybody.
At what point did it change from that, and what did it change to from the Western Union and the dictating over the phone? What did you transfer to then?
Yeah, we started going. That's when they began installing the computers, and they almost had to pry my fingers away from the typewriter to get me to even use the computer. I was reluctant to make that change, but it was either adapt or look for another job. So I had to do it, but it's actually turned out much better, certainly, to have it as we have it today. No, there's no question.
Did you think that computer was the devil?
It treated me that way, or either I treated it that way. I was not savvy with that. Still am not, actually.
Well, it's funny. You talk about typewriters and Western Union, and then I think about the conversation we had with Jeff Gravely at WRAL, where they're flying helicopters to and from high school football fields, and just, and now the technology that we have today, I mean, even things like transcribing interviews, we're using AI to do that, and it's just incredible the different tools that are available. And I remember when I first started 10 years ago, I was, we were highly encouraged to take notes versus recording on a recorder. And now, I mean, when's the last time, JJ, you took notes during an interview?
Yeah, even covering high school sports, AJ, there's an app now on the smartphone called Game Changer.
That's right.
When we cover baseball and softball, and these coaches have an iPad in the dugout, and they keep the track of the game. And when the game ends, everything, I mean, every stat, of course, baseball, there's more stats than you could ever want. And as soon as the game ends, there's every stat for a high school baseball game that probably more stats than you got at the Final Fours back in 1974 and 1983.
Is that right? They can do that now?
Oh, my gosh, it's phenomenal.
Gee whiz.
Yeah. So, I imagine technology was a big...
yeah, if you were covering high school, though, back then, we covered high school, too, some, games and wrote about them, which was a joy as well. But I mean, we had to, you had to dig for stats, and it was not, you did have some help with it, but it wasn't anything like that.
No, I was telling Zach the other day just how even when I started, you would sit in the dugout with the scorekeeper after the game for like 30 minutes, just writing down every single thing that happened.
Yeah, I think the very first year I worked, I had to call somebody for football stats, but since then it's been either electronic or we keep it ourselves now, obviously.
That's
football.
Right. Saturday mornings was on the phone talking to coaches and getting every little stat you could get. And now that's the same thing, AJ. After a game, they've got on the iPad and they just send it all to you. It's a whole new world.
Man, that really makes it so much easier.
I'm telling you.
That's nice.
And
I don't think we ever had that. Not when I was doing it. No.
And not only did technology change, AJ, but you go from covering high school sports and college sports to, in the beginning, to by the time you left, there was an NFL team, an NHL team, and an NBA team in the state.
Yeah. And some of that was, and one thing I really never envisioned us having a hockey team here. I just didn't, but it happened, and man, they've really done well. They have a large, enthusiastic following here. But that was the last. I thought maybe Major League Baseball, maybe the NFL, something like that. But I couldn't envision ice hockey. But it's they're popular, in the area here.
For sure. Winning always helps, right?
Winning always helps. That makes it better for everybody. Yeah. It's like Coach Sloan at one time after one of the games at Reynolds. State won the. No, I think maybe I guess they lost that game. Maybe, yeah. And then he was asked a question. He said, "What?" Somebody asked the question. Even though you lost this game, what do you think? Were there any positives that you could take from it that might help you moving forward? And he had this kind of brittle glint in his eye, and he just said, "Winning is good, losing is bad," and that was the end of this. that just summed it up.
That was insightful, wasn't it? You talked about things you couldn't envision with the ice hockey, AJ. How about this? How about the NIL and the transfer portal and the way that's revolutionizing college basketball and in college football these days? Yeah,
good grief. Yeah, that's an incredible change. One for the NIL. I'm happy for the players. I'm happy they can receive or get some money from it. The question I have though is how can they govern that or set it up where it would be fair? Like with scholarships. Each school gets an allotment of scholarships, but with the NIL, it seems like that's an individual, school by school situation, and so, some schools can really offer a player basically a certain amount of money, and then another one, well, we don't have that, so. I think I can't see how it's an equal playing field right now with the way it is, unless there's some way they could establish a ceiling, a limit on the amount schools could distribute. But then again, I don't know, too, how they would govern that or police it, you might say.
Yeah, it's kind of like baseball, the only sport without a salary cap, right? Without a cap, it's kind of going to boil down to the haves and have-nots.
Right. And just like the other day, I saw where I think a player from Michigan, I believe, offered like $1.7 million from another, or knew he could get that much from another school, and just as one example, and you see some players leaving. Obviously, some have left, for that financial. The financial difference. So I wish they could make it just make it equal some way, or fair for everyone. And I think it also impacts schools at say Division II level or maybe that far down, or affect their programs. Say a player is having a great year at Division II, and then somebody obviously sees an opportunity to move up to Division I or be offered and go. Yeah, so I think it creates a huge challenge for the coaches in that regard as well.
AJ, for when you do something for 43 years, that's a long time to do anything. What do you miss the most about after 43 years of reporting? The relationships and being just actively involved with the people in sports, be it players, coaches, and also the people I work with too. We really enjoy them. They're good friends, and so obviously you miss the games, but you can see the games on all the games on TV. So I've enjoyed that a great deal, but I miss the other part of it probably the most. The friendships and relationships with them. I read somewhere where you went.
Although the games were fun, to be at the games and covering them and working them were always a pleasure. Except when you were under incredible deadline situations.
Yeah, what's it like living under a deadline for 43 years and then not having deadlines?
Yeah, it's more relaxing. It's not as stressful, that's for sure. We had some tough deadlines there sometimes, especially 9:00 basketball games. And then you got maybe 20 or 30 minutes maybe to make it or miss it and things like that. So.
You didn't know any different. That was your entire life, your entire adulthood, right?
Yeah, just about for a long, long time. Yeah, you just had to do it. Thankfully, thankfully the Lord helped us through it. Yeah.
AJ, I read somewhere where you went 42 years and 8 months. You didn't want to go another 4 months to make it a clean 43, or was it time to go when it was time to go?
Well, it was time to go, and then when that decision was made, then they gave me the date that I needed to go. So.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
43 years is a long time. I'm sure they probably all run together, but when you think back on it, what are some of the favorite stories you ever reported on?
Oh, my goodness. It was, let's see, there were so many of those, and I mean that that you enjoyed it. It was kind of interesting in that regard. Had a chance to write. One thing they gave us the opportunity to do here for a long time. We could write about high school, mid-major, CIAA, and ACC Division I, and it was a pleasure just to write about all of them at all levels. Actually, I mean, every story was important, every person was important, so it was good from that standpoint. But I would say one of them would have been a pretty long story on Charlie Justice, Choo-Choo Justice, who played Carolina, great football player, 46-49, and that was one of the enjoyable features certainly on him, and also Wallace Wade, who was a legendary football coach at Duke and long ago. But those were two that were just two of them that were really interesting or enjoyable to work on.
Did you enjoy writing features more than game recaps?
Yeah, I really enjoyed the features, like the profiles or the write about the player individually. Yeah, I did. I enjoyed the features. I enjoyed the games greatly, and it was enjoyable to write about the games. But I believe I really enjoyed the features. I think more because you could write about not only what they did, but you could write about who they are. I mean, who they are as a person and their values, and what they were like from a personal standpoint. So I enjoy that aspect of it.
And I can't tell you how many times I've read or heard reporters say that covered college ball and NFL or NBA or Major League Baseball that some of the favorite times of their career was covering high school sports, and there you guys are in the Triangle, can cover Duke basketball and in Carolina and the state, and you're covering football in the fall, and eventually in the state it became the NFL and NBA and hockey and stuff. But did you still enjoy covering high school sports, and how long did you keep doing that?
Well, it didn't really last too long, because not too long after I was at the News and Observer, it was several years, but then we moved into that, to the beat system, and then you began to have and that was, you were then connected to the college primarily, or, another one of the area professional teams in minor league baseball or something like that. So we didn't have as much opportunity to write about them, but I enjoyed talking with or writing about the high school players, or or feature on a coach there as well. I really did. One year, you just never knew what you might draw, though, on the beat system. One year I got East Carolina, which I really enjoyed. I greatly enjoyed the experience with East Carolina for about 6 years. And but at the same time, we had a hockey team here called the Ice Caps, and I was also assigned to cover the Ice Caps. And I'd never seen. I didn't know anything about hockey. I didn't know anything. I mean, hardly. And thankfully, the coach there and the players were pretty patient with me, and and helped me with it quite a bit, because I didn't know basically what I was talking about. I still had to write about it. So.
The Ice Caps was the very first professional or semi-professional sports event I ever been to, or that I ever had gone to as a child. I grew up in a
Was
hockey.
it really?
Yeah, I grew up in a hockey family, and being in North Carolina, there wasn't a whole lot of opportunities for that. So we would go to Ice Caps games, and then we went to the Hurricane. I think the second season they were a team, and boy, the energy in those stadiums are a lot different than a lot of other sports. They was loud, and it was a lot of fun, and a lot of the stuff they would do would be fun, and I'm sure covering that would be a blast.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up here, but I mean, like, I think, my dad was a Rangers fan. I grew up idolizing the Red Wings and Yzerman and Shanahan and all those guys, and
okay.
So it was just a hockey thing.
You were probably the only hockey fan in Newport.
I think so. Yeah. Well, Mighty Ducks had come out. That was a big thing,
Yeah.
Well,
you mentioned how loud it was. I thought I went to a Hurricanes game, one of the early ones though. But what really surprised me, I didn't think I'd ever be in an arena where the atmosphere was, or the noise level was louder than an ACC basketball game. But actually, it was louder at the Hurricanes hockey game. It really was, yeah.
Well, Zach and I was talking about beats earlier, AJ. Zach and and our beats is high school sports, and we would have been excited to cover an athlete like AJ Carr. I'm telling you what. Yeah, check it out now. Well, hold on, Zach. Wait for this.
Let me hear the resume.
Yeah, Wallace Rose Hill, which
that alone,
all I have to say is Wallace Rose Hill, right?
Sure.
Yeah. Football star, basketball star, baseball star. He was all conference in football. He was all conference in basketball. He was all-state 2A tournament player in basketball. He played under legendary coach Thale Overman in football. And he did all of this at a whopping 5'7" and 135 pounds.
Whew. Sounds like he would have been a News Times Player of the Year.
No.
Tell me about those Wallace Rose Hills days, AJ.
Yeah. Well, that was a very, very enjoyable, rewarding time there, because Wallace was we had a legendary coach. Of course, and Coach Overman was a great coach and a great man, Christian man. And he just created a culture there that was special, and people in the community were really in love with sports, and so I grew up in that environment. But then just having the opportunity to play in high school those three sports and play for him, and then also Dick Powers some in basketball, and Neil Carlton was another coach who was really instrumental also in the program. And so it was just a tremendous thrill and joy to do it. I'm just really thankful I had that opportunity. And we did fortunately we had good coaching, we had good players, so we had good teams in all three sports. And so that made it better too. Like, when Coach Long said, winning is good, losing is bad. So, but we were in the league too. We played Morehead City was in our conference, and
wow.
they had really tough teams, and especially in football and basketball during that time.
Was Wallace Rose Hill already a legendary football program when you got there, or
yeah, it started in 1946.
Oh wow.
49 when Coach Overman came to Wallace. At that time, it was Wallace High School, Then it became Wallace Rose Hill. So he had great teams at Wallace, and then it just carried over into, into Wallace Rose Hill during that time, and then continued with some coaches that followed him, Jack Holly and Joey Price, and some of those that were able to sustain it, and all. But my wife really has much more to talk about than I do, because she was at Beaufort, and she was a cheerleader there when they were during their 91 game winning streak, and 3 straight basketball championships and 1 football championship. So she has more stories to tell.
Yeah, we just had Butch Hassel on a couple of episodes ago.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was recollecting over those 91 straight wins and 3 state championships. So they were doing some
stuff
in
Beaufort. He was a great player, and they had great teams there. Yeah, I had a chance to get to know them through my wife, and Butch, and meet him, and also Chuck Lewis, who played on that team, some of those teams.
So AJ, you go to Wallace Rose Hill. You're a three sport standout. You end up at Guilford College. At what point do you know that you want to write about sports for a living?
Well, actually, I felt that way when I was in high school, because I worked with the recreation department in the summer, and of course we had a local paper, the Wallace Enterprise, biweekly, and so they needed somebody to write and report on the summer league sports or game, mostly baseball at that time. So somebody asked if I could do it. I said, well, okay, I'll give it a try. So just started trying to do it, and then so my interest kind of grew greatly from that. So when I went to Guilford, I went on one weekend with Coach Overman. Took me to up there with him one time, and he knew the sports editor at the Greensboro Daily News, and I just went to his office and expressed an interest there, and as it turned out, the person who had been covering Guilford had graduated. They needed somebody to fill that spot and cover high schools, and so I had the timing was perfect, and I had the opportunity to work at the Daily News for 4 years when I was in school there, and 1 year after I was in 1 year after graduating, and that was a great learning experience. And really, they had an outstanding staff and good mentors, and it was so helpful, and so that helped a great deal. But I knew I wanted to either write or coach, one of the two, but it went more toward the writing aspect.
You wanted to stick around sports one way or another, huh?
Yeah, I definitely wanted to be in sports. I sure did. And I think that probably started with my daddy when I was about 7 or 8 years old. We obviously subscribed to the News and Observer, and one day he said, let's look at the sports page. And so from that day, just about, I think Dick Grote was a great player at Duke, baseball, basketball, later played for the Pittsburgh Pirates. But so I began to follow him, then followed Duke, State, Carolina, Wake Forest, and I was just fascinated. I'd get up before school, really, and read the sports pages. I mean, before going to school, read the sports page when I was at a very early age. I was really fascinated by it.
And you're pretty young when you started at the News Observer, right?
I guess I was 20, about 23.
Wow.
Yeah, 23, 24.
How about that?
And that was, and then again, Dick Herbert was a sports editor at the News Observer, another person I had the greatest respect for, one of the most knowledgeable person I think I'd ever been around. And I had also known him from high school because I was interested in writing, and I would send him some of my stories when I was in high school for him to critique. He'd reply. And so he said one day, if you had an opening, he would give me a call, and so that's what what happened, and I was about 23. I just spent 1 year full time at the Daily News, and so I was just fortunate because he could have hired a multitude of writers far better than I was, but he had, that's what he had told me, so he kept his promise or word, and which I was glad he did, but that's how that kind of happened.
I like guys with initials for names. I think they're trustworthy, they're good looking, they're smart. I think those guys with initials are really good. Mine is because I'm a junior, and I'm assuming yours is too, AJ. But why don't you tell people what AJ stands for? I think people will be very interested to hear this name.
Yeah, it's Arminius, Arminius Johnson Carr Jr. And so that's my dad's name. He was Arminius, and they call me AJ, and that makes it easier for people to spell and pronounce.
Yeah, Arminius is not easy to do either one, is it?
Neither one. In fact, it's misspelled on my credit card.
No doubt.
But it still spins though. What does JJ stand for?
Jeffrey Jr.
Jeffrey Jr. Okay.
Jr. So a little bit easier to spell and say than Arminius. AJ, you mentioned your wife earlier, her being a Beaufort Sea Dog. She's Nancy Hutley of Beaufort. You've spent your entire adult life coming down to Carteret County and the Crystal Coast, but I love the story you told. You came down to Carteret County. Gosh, it's been, I think right when I first started the paper, you spoke with the Fellowship of Christian Athletes, and I wrote a story on you doing that speech that night, and you told a story about how you and your wife met. Share that with us. That crack. I remember that cracking me up. Well, thank you. Yeah, thank you for thank you for the story. I remember you were very kind to do that. Thank you. But actually, we had a mutual friend in Wallace. This was a gentleman that he was not a coach, but he was heavily involved with our athletic program, umpiring, driving the team bus. Real great person, and he was his name was Chick Simmons, and he was an especially close friend of Nancy's family, and in fact, it's so close that she would call him Uncle Sam. So one time, she and her family came to Wallace on a Saturday night, and so I was going with another. I had a steady girlfriend at that time, and so he called me like about 5 o'clock in the afternoon or something. He said Nancy, his niece, was in town and wondered if she could go with us, or if I could do something that might entertain her. And of course, I couldn't say no to him. I mean, for any reason whatsoever. So I said, yeah, we can do that. So we were double dating too. I was with a friend, a good friend, and also picked Nancy up. So we went to the drive-in movie, and and she was the fifth person in the car, and so she said it was the most miserable night of her life. And she told me later she had hoped she'd never see me again. Oh wow! She didn't get a wish though, did she?
And then he reconnected us again though when she went to Greensboro College and I was at Guilford. So I got a call one day and he told me that Nancy was at Greensboro College and she was really, really homesick. Would I just mind going over and visiting her? So I said, yeah, sure, I'll go if she'll allow me to. So I called her. So went over to visit, and it kind of, we connected pretty well then that time.
And so the first night together, she calls the most miserable night of her life. And what anniversary will you celebrate this year?
This will be, 58, I believe.
Wow.
58 years.
How about that?
Yeah, I was blessed to have an angel on my way.
Over the years, you've got to know some guys that we have on the podcast from time to time. We'll have Mr. Rodney Kemp on and talk sports. We'll have Cecil Lilly, and you got to know those guys over the year.
Yeah, that was always nice to see them. And I haven't seen either one of them in a while. We haven't been back down there, obviously, this recently. But yeah, both Cecil and Rodney, too. Really, really wonderful folks. Chuck Lewis, another person I've known from. Well, in fact, I was in Chuck's wedding, as a matter of fact. And then, of course, as I mentioned earlier, I usually when I go down there, I see Dexter and then Mindy over at her, the Friendly Market there. We're fond of, they were, of course, both of them were great athletes, and we're fond of her food also.
And you wrote a story on Chuck about him being a coach and a teacher and also a shrimper, right?
Yeah, one summer. I think that was one of his summer jobs, I believe. Yeah, that was a long time ago. I can't remember when I even wrote it, but it was decades ago. Yeah. And are we still playing tennis? I understand we were quite the tennis player back in the day. I enjoyed playing tennis. I mean, I didn't play growing up. We didn't have it in Wallace, really, so I just started as an adult. Just played, at a recreational level for about 30 years. I just enjoyed it a great deal. But I've had I had a hip replacement in '99, and so after that, I kind of shifted. I kept working out, but doing some other things that weren't as zigzag and stop and start type. I didn't want to have to go back in for another one of those procedures, but it was enjoyable to play. But now I can't. I just had another hip revision about 3 weeks ago. So, but I don't have any complaints. I'm doing fine, actually.
I should have mentioned earlier that AJ was a 2-time North Carolina Sports Writer of the Year, and to show some consistency, he won that award in 1978, and the next time he won it was 2008.
So a little bookend.
Well, I might have done a real poor job between those 2 years too.
I don't think that's the case.
It's
AJ,
likely,
thank you so much for being with us today. We appreciate your time.
Yeah, well, thank you, JJ. Appreciate you having me. It was a joy to be with you. Appreciate everything.